Wait. Anita, start.
Okay, thank you. Namaskar. Welcome to Garze Marathi's Fireside Chat. Today we are very fortunate to have Dr. Nitin Salunke with us, CEO of Supira Medical, a medical device company. Welcome, Nitinji. Today we are going to learn about Nitinji's journey from a mechanical engineering student at COEP to a very successful entrepreneur. We are also going to learn about Nitinji's thoughts on startup process from ideation all the way to a successful venture and then exit strategy. So we are all excited to welcome you here, Dr. Nitin, and learn from you. So at this point, I'll also request people to write their questions in the chat. Anandji is monitoring the chat, and at the end, we will take all the questions. So Nitinji, welcome again one more time. And I have a question for you. Let's learn about your life journey. When you were a student back home in COEP, a engineering student, did you think that you will become an entrepreneur, or you dreamed about a good job, salary, and no risk kind of life? Please, Nitinji, you are muted.
Nitin on mute.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you again, Anita, for inviting me, and Anindji for making me come here and share my experiences here. Of course, like anyone else's experience, we all learn from each other. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and learning from each other as well. Talking about the question and the journey from student to being an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley. I started my educational journey being a mechanical engineer, and that time, of course, my passion was to be either aerospace or automotive industry sector executive, or at least contributing to that sector. And interesting twists and turns happened coming into biomedical industry. And of course, that time, 20, 30 years plus ago, biomedical engineering was relatively very, very new field. So that excited me. And there were certain circumstances made me consider this journey. But to answer your question quickly, that wasn't something I was thinking about, being an entrepreneur at that stage. It was more about getting fascinated and attracted by the field of biomedical engineering.
So then, Dr. Nitin, you went on to have a very interesting journey. You got your doctorate after crossing the Atlantic, and then you had an interesting journey that you were for big companies, 50,000 people. You led them, then went to a startup, then back into uh, another big company, and then against this particular venture. So what was the thought process? It's an interesting journey. We would all like to learn about that.
Yeah, so it started a little bit during the graduate school, that thought process. I was a mechanical engineering student working on my PhD in materials science, and materials behavior. And as it always happens, you happen to take a course out of curiosity, and I was taking a course in biomechanics, application of mechanical engineering or mechanics principles to biological tissues. And as it goes, one of those teachers and professors, I had an opportunity to learn from that subject from one of outstanding faculty, and that really changed my thought process. Instead of just taking a material and using in a traditional manner, it was very fascinating to understand that we can learn about human body like a machine and treat it like a machine, and can develop component and products to help and understand the disease process and address some of the disease condition. So that's where my initial journey started in terms of getting fascinated towards biomedical engineering. And as I was finishing the PhD program, one of my thesis advisor was a cardiologist, and he asked me, like, Nitin, what next for you now that you are finishing your PhD? And I said, possibly I'll look for the postdoc position or a faculty position. And that's when he highly recommended. He said, no, Nitin, we need more of you in the industry who can develop products, those I can use on a daily basis in my day-to-day patient treatment. And that's how we basically referred me to few companies, and that's how my career in biomedical started. And one of the job offer I got that time was from WL Gore. Gore has different divisions. One of them is biomedical division, where they apply polymeric material called EPTFE or Gore-Tex, commonly known, for a medical application. And the reason I'm mentioning that, although it was a relatively larger company, it really had a very entrepreneurial spirit. It allowed us to work within a smaller team, take on the challenges, come up with a solution to unmet clinical needs. And it's really a perfect combination of academic, large company financial support, but a small company entrepreneurial spirit. And so that's, I did not realize I worked there for my first 15 years, but truly I get to test the spirit of starting something from scratch and taking it to a successful product. And that's where I got that flavor of, hey, this is possible. You can come up with an idea and then get it all the way to clinical and then subsequent commercial status. And so while doing so, as I transitioned to different companies, that background, that that fascination towards starting something from the scratch and taking it all the way to clinical and commercial success became the hallmark.
Yeah, the reason I asked this question because we do have a lot of academic people here uh, from various institutes, as well as we have people who are in industry for some time, and they are waiting to take that first step towards entrepreneurship. So that's why this is very inspiring for us. That yes, somebody who has academic background, who has a doctorate, as well as who worked in industry for quite some time, and then he started his journey into the successful venture. So that is very inspiring. That's what we wanted to bring forward in this particular question. Let's coming to the startup. All of us would love to know, how does the idea of a startup, how does it brew in your mind? It is like, do you look out for a particular type of research and you get fascinated and let's take it to the industry level, or do you check out, hey, this is already there, is it a brand new concept that you like to work with, or it's already there, let me improve on it? What's your thought process there?
Yeah, so there are multiple ways of creating something new, right? Either you can come up with I'm talking about biotech, health, medical devices sector. We have a disease conditions, and those diseases get treated by different therapies. Either you can come up with a new therapy. Typically, that happens by partnering with the physicians and clinicians who are working in there, or you can go into the existing therapy, observe what is working, what is not working, and you will notice many a time there is always a room to improvise the treatment or therapy for the given disease condition.
Yes.
And usually I take the route of going to the existing therapy and see whether we can improvise anything. It was a time when I was joining the biomedical and that to cardiovascular disease segment back in the early 90s, where the surgical procedures were getting either replaced by or augmented by minimally invasive or interventional or endovascular, as we call, procedures. Those were the times when the open heart bypass surgery was getting replaced by angioplasty and stent. And that was very fascinating. Instead of cutting open the chest, you were going in and going through the blood vessel and opening that blockage through a balloon catheter or a stent. So that's where my initial foundation happened, where I said, no, how can I work on something where I can minimize patient trauma, or understand the disease condition and treat the disease where you don't have to cut open or go through massive invasive procedure. So with that backdrop, my thought process became like, hey, if there is an existing therapy, can I improvise it? No, and the one way to do that is you can go and observe the procedures, partner with the physicians, understand where they struggle. And if you address that struggling area, then that becomes the idea for the product.
Perfect. Yeah. So basically, to take away, you observe, you have to be, especially coming to biomedical field, you need to be in the field, work, and actually go and observe. So did you visit many cardiologists, or did you visit and actually been in the operation OTs for procedures?
Yeah,
Did you?
that's where it, where again, going back to the foundational years in the grad school, you know, I always wanted to work on application oriented research. And so that's why, by design, I had a cardiologist and pathologist on my PhD committee, even though I was a mechanical engineering student working on biomedical research. And that's where the cardiologist, in the first thing he did was, Nitin, come and just join me once a week, one day a week, just stand by me and then observe me doing the procedure. And that became the habit. So when I started working with my first job, when I was given an assignment of coming up with some product ideas or product concept for a cardiology space, the first thing I did was, let's understand what the company has to offer. The company has a specialty in polymeric material application to cardiovascular system. So I said, now that I have the material, let me go and understand and observe some procedures where the material is already getting used surgically. And so by attending the surgical procedure and seeing how the surgical material, the material gets used to fix the heart defect using a surgery, I realized that why do we have to open the heart and go through a surgical procedure? Can we do it minimally invasive way? Can you deliver it using a catheter? And that's how that became again another habit of, anytime I enter into a new therapy area, the first thing I like to do is talk to the physician and go into the operating room or surgical suites to attend the procedure. Because by observing and seeing what they are doing, each person has his vantage point, right? With our background, we see the same thing differently. And that's another thing I enjoyed very much so in the partnering and interacting with physician early upon as you start a new product journey.
Yeah. So thank you. That's very good point. That again, keep your eyes and eyes open, ears open, and be in the field. Just roll your sleeves and be in the field, even at the stage of conceptualization and also ideation. So let's talk about, yes, there is a concept that yes, you have figured out that this is what I want to work on. What do you see, how do you qualify that process? How do you qualify that this is the product? Yes, I have done my background work. I know this is what I would go, but is there any qualifiers in your mind that yes, this will at the end become most likely a successful product, or this is something that I want to really deep dive into?
Again, throughout the product concept and product development selection process, I had a personal bias. I like to go into the area where a product already is being used, but has either the market monopoly or has significant market share, however has area for improvement. Just because the product has a market monopoly or has a dominating share doesn't mean that product has no room for further improvement. So we call that a fast follower approach,
Okay.
where if someone already has established a therapy and has a product in the marketplace, but then by observation you realize that there is room for some improvement there. So usually that's my first approach to understand that is this therapy and the treatment or product has been proven, i.e., it is making a difference in improving patients' life. And so, in other words, you can develop a brand new therapy, but that takes a long time and it's a little bit more a significant undertaking. My mindset and approach is always, if there is a product already, can I make it better with more efficacy and safety? And so that is where I usually apply the first filter. Second filter is, of course, what's the commercial success, because end of the day we are here to create a commercial success, both either for the investors or for the shareholders in the larger company. And even though I started my R&D career as in the R&D field, in the more technical field, for some reason I always had that commercial orientation, that end of the day when we are investing $1 in that given R&D project, we have to return more than $1. So there has to be a commercial return potential end of the journey. So it's understanding that application and keeping an exit in mind. Is it going to be a clinical and then commercial success for a larger company, or is it going to be a smaller company that you work with that has a potential eventually to have an exit, whether it's an IPO exit, whether it's an acquisition. But keeping that end in mind, that's usually how I start the project, whether it's a larger company or with a small company.
Thank you so much. So again, that exit, the word buzzword exit really rings into my mind and everybody's mind. Many of us here are at the point where they are working on something, they have some idea, they may even have a prototype, they may have even a diagnostic test that they have developed either in their lab, or it's there, that part is already taken. Now you have to go to an investor and go to the VC. How do you prepare yourself for that?
Yeah, so if you do this first part right, where you understand the unmet need, whether you understand the application, but let me take a little detour answering that question, Anita. And to have this entrepreneurial journey, you have to prepare for it right from the big earlier part of your career. I didn't do it intentionally, but I've been fortunate where I get to work with team members and companies and projects and products where I get to practice some of these skills. And being here in Silicon Valley was one of the advantage. I initially started my career in Arizona, and then when one of my employer at that time had an acquisition, they acquired a smaller company here in Silicon Valley, and I was hand selected to come and work on that acquisition integration. And that's where I got my first exposure to a smaller company getting acquired by a larger company, although I was on the other side of the fence at that time. And subsequently, two or three other acquisitions happened in the period of 10 years when I was with that company. And I get to always see the acquisition, the smaller company, and their activities and how they were getting prepared to get acquired. And so that created that inclination that, hey, one of these days, maybe I should be on the other side. Maybe I should start a company and then get a product done and have it available for acquisition by a larger corporation. So by keeping that in mind, talking about financing and fundraising, it cannot happen overnight, and so that's where you start developing your network. That's where you start developing the understanding of how this process works. And end of the day, it becomes a collective decision about how good is the idea of course, the protection and intellectual property, but also they look for your background and your experience. Have you done it before? Have you can they bet on you? Is there a high degree of success by investing in this individual and this product? So when it comes to investing decision, as much as it gets decided by the product and the market opportunity and commercial success, they also look into the individual and the talent and the people. And so, as we always hear, VCs not only bet on the product, they also bet on the people. So, start developing that network early upon in your therapy space, in your technical space where you are working in a given biotech or medtech area, because all of that network is what contribute end of the day towards making that investment decision and or recruiting or talent acquisition decision for your enterprise.
Dr. Nitin, also one thing that I have observed, we are in Silicon Valley. We have a lot of IT startups that go on. There are, and of course, Silicon Valley here itself is the home or the starting point of biotechnology. That's how we boast ourselves. But at the same time, do you look for VCs, or do you look for investors who specialize in medical devices or who specialize in biotech companies? So that is something that we need to, that's very important for many people who have joined today, who are looking for a startup.
Yeah, what I noticed is if you are already, if your idea or your product is related to existing therapy space,
Yeah.
there are many of the investors who prioritize in that given therapy space. Within biotech, medtech, there are VCs who prioritize cardiovascular disease segment, or they go into orthopedic space in medical devices, or they go into surgical space or non-surgical, minimal invasive surgical space. So it always makes an impact to have at least a first investor that specializes in that space, because that validates your idea, that validates your proposal, that if someone with expertise, investing in expertise in that space is willing to put money down, then the other areas, other sector investors also come up. So yes, I think my preference is to go after those type of investors who have expertise in the biotech medtech space. However, I won't exclude other options also. That's just my personal bias there. However, if your idea is not a fast follower type idea, it's really truly a breakthrough idea. They're also having a investor with a expertise in that space helps, because you want someone else also to validate your idea. You don't want to drink your own Kool-Aid, right? You need
Correct.
someone else to validate, because that is very important. There's a very fine line to walk, right, to being passionate about what you are trying to do, but at the same time you don't want to be so blind that you don't get the feedback and you don't make adjustment along your journey. So
Correct.
that's one way to go after that sector. But if your idea is very much out of the norms, then it does make sense to go after the investors who may not be in that sector, who may be willing to take a chance. Along with the VCs, Anita, one other major source of funds, especially in the beginning, earlier stages, is the angel investors. The angel investors circle is extremely active at least in Silicon Valley. You just need to get exposed to that, and so those are some of the things I stumbled upon. Again, I didn't plan for some of these things, so it's very interesting to revisit how some of the things happen and how you get exposed to some of these resources. But then now that I understand the criticality of those resources, I will recommend to know not only the venture capital aspect of the investing, but the angel investors are also they play a critical role.
So I think that's a
Quite.
message. That's a message for Garze Marathi too, that we need to have a body of angel investors as well as access to the right VCs who are playing in this field of medical devices, diagnosis, or biotech and health in general. So that's a message that we will take, and that's our task further. So that's great. One more question is, what kind of skill set that you think we should all develop, as you came from academics as well as, so we have a mixed band of people here, academics, some from industry, and some might be also from health industry. Actually, some are from hospitals too. I see some of them coming from hospital setting, and they have mixed backgrounds. Some are engineers, some are actually biologists, and some are technologists, let's say, called, so we call ourselves technologists.
Mhm.
What three or four skill sets that you think that we should adopt, we should try and learn?
Yeah. So a couple, three things. So one is, being a scientist or engineers or technologists, we are biased towards being, fascinated by the technical aspect and the aspect of problem solving, the technical problem solving. That's all good. We have to all start somewhere. But along with that, we have to also start, developing so-called business acumen, right? We have to keep the commercial side of the aspect in mind. Sooner or later, as we progress through our career, personal choice, one can be remain a pure subject matter expert and technologist and scientist, nothing wrong with it. But those who have aspiration to go beyond that and either create something from scratch, either in a smaller company, or creating a business segment or product line that becomes a business segment in a larger company, you have to start developing that financial framework mindset, that business acumen, where you always keep the financial aspect, the commercial aspect in mind while working on it. And that means you have to start developing the cross-functional mindset. You cannot be very R&D centric, right? Research and development is great, but you need quality, you need manufacturing, you need clinical, you need regulatory, and of course subsequently marketing and commercialization. And so start learning those fields, start partnering with those leaders or counterpart in your organization, and start learning from them about their skill sets and how they get their job done, because eventually you need all of that. You need the whole village to make your product or enterprise successful. So that business acumen is one thing that you have to start developing early upon, if not along the way. Second aspect is having an ability to attract talent. You can do this thing by alone. And so talent acquisition and retention and net recognition, and that talent acquisition, my methodology or my approach was by just continuously working on the network. I am I whenever you come across someone or you see someone, you get to know that person, and then stay connected with that person, because you never know when you have to call upon that individual, either to have that person come and work with you, or have that individual refer you some other individual that you are looking for. So a lot of our recruiting and the talent needs, you may be able to fulfill much better through having a larger network and connections than trying to go through traditional job postings process. So business acumen, networking, talent acquisition, and keeping those two things in mind as you walk this journey. And the reason I'm mentioning these couple of things first, because it doesn't happen overnight when you need it, right? You have to develop, you have to recognize it, develop it, and then and grow, continuously grow it and nourish it along the way, because that's when time comes to call upon these expertise and the talent, then those are available for you.
So my next question is, that's very good. Having that mindset, changing the mindset slowly, and at the same time, network is the most important thing. Don't be shy to go and get your friends set up already before you even think of jumping into and standing in front of the VC. So one of the question is medical devices. You are in a very specialized field, and there is IT. How is the medical devices field different than the IT? How the business development there is different than IT? What are the key points you would say that, hey, this is okay in IT, we can't? For example, you need to have a prototype, you need to have those patents, you need to have proof of principle, you have to show that yes, this device or this diagnostic test or whatever you have built, maybe a research instrument or a medical device, it actually works. So there is initial funding needed to even establish that. So that is something we would like to know. What is, first of all, what's the difference between these two? Since you are in Silicon Valley, you may have a better understanding of that. And second one is, how are these two filled? We also will get into the regulatory aspect in a bit, but because of time, I would get into the first one. How are they two different?
Yeah, of course, you said it, Anita. One of the major difference between maybe a tech world and the biotech or medtech world is, we deal with the physical prototype and the product. So having access to the basic initial, prototyping capability is also very, very useful, whether you do it in your own garage, or there are also one of the other framework available in different part of the world, but more in Silicon Valley, is there are incubator houses. There are the places where serial entrepreneurs, they come together, or individual entrepreneur, in my case, in my current framework, where that individual has created an incubator house where either you can walk in with an idea and partner with the incubator founder, and then become a founding partner, and that way you get access to the pre-existing lab and capabilities, where you can then convert your concept into working prototype, and generate some early bench result, and if possible, have some initial animal study results, because those two, bench and animal study, early proof of concept, go a long way when you are going through the fundraising process, for example, as well as it gives you your confidence that, hey, this is the idea worth pursuing. So finding a framework, whether it's an academic lab or incubator type setup, where you can practice your prototype, that is one thing. Other way to build those physical prototype is, there are various contract manufacturing and prototype developers. There are quite a few of those firms came up in the last 20 years, and you can partner with them. Of course, you will need some initial funding. That's where the angel investing comes handy. By taking that early funds, you can translate your concept or idea into the working prototype. So having that access to that other side of the ecosystem is also equally important. Again, these things don't happen overnight. So as you are walking your professional journey in your sector, keep developing these resources. Who are these contract manufacturers or prototype developers? Who are the similar-minded talent people, who are the incubator houses and things like that. And so start generating that ecosystem. So when you want to practice your own ideas, at least those resources are ready. But yeah, that's a one major difference. And it's funny you asked that question, Anita, because that's one mindset I had, being here 20 plus year in Silicon Valley and surrounded by all the
I think
folks in the tech world. I learned from them. I borrow many of the things what they do well in that sector, but we have our differences, right? As you rightfully said, we need a physical product and prototypes. We have regulatory systems and quality systems to comply with, and many of the other things. So there are some parallels, but there are major differences. And learning from each other, and having that sounding board. And sometimes I do, brainstorm with my friends in the tech sector how they will do it. Not that that solution applied to my current problem, but at least you get some different viewpoint from them. So that's the luxury to be here,
to be
surrounded by the other ecosystem.
which with that I think there is the question that lot of people here, I can see that they are from India or from outside of that. So while at the end of our talk, one or two questions that I would like to pose most likely will come from this. Anand ji,
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Dr. Nitin, Dr. Anita, thanks a lot for a very interesting conversation. But I know about Nitin's journey. So, would you like to speak about your present enterprise and what
Yeah,
you're
we are coming
doing?
to that, Anandji, in a bit. I
Yeah.
just have one or two questions that we will finish,
Okay.
and then we'll
Okay.
ask him to give the final spiel on his journey about his own particular instrumentation that he has. So
Okay.
let me finish one or two points, and then we'll go there. So in the interest of time, as I see a lot of people here who are from India or from Europe side, we would like to see if is it possible that what you talked about incubators, also you talked about having a prototype and doing those experiments, is it possible to have that bridge, that these are something, these experimental uh, the results or whatever data you are going to collect, can it come from India? Is there something you have thought of?
Yeah, no, although slowly and gradually, the medtech sector is catching momentum more in the Asian region, especially in India. Of course, China is a little bit ahead of that, and also in some of the European markets. Also, the best part of being in the healthcare, medtech, biotech sector is the disease conditions are global or universal. No, there is no such regional there are some regionalities, but usually the disease situation is global, right? When you have cardiac issue, it can happen in the Western world, it can happen in India, it can happen in Europe. And especially in the cardiovascular sector, we have a disproportionate disease burden in India, whether it's because of lifestyle, because of uh, eating habits and whatnot. The cardiovascular disease, diabetes, there are certain diseases, those are disproportionately impacting Indian population. And I will say that's why there is more room for innovation in India. And then the market exists locally there. And what I have seen some of the enterprises coming out of India region is that instead of they coming to the Western market, where in the Western Europe or in the US, where you need to get the regulatory approval, and that takes more time and energy, and hence finances. Sometime you may go in the region where the regulatory requirements are not as stringent, and there you can practice the therapy as long as you develop your product in a safe and efficacious manner. You may be able to practice that therapy in the other regions and get the clinical validation, and then plan to enter into the more developed markets subsequently. I have seen some of the enterprises coming out of India who took that path and did it very well. So it doesn't have to the product doesn't have to address the US market or developed market need from the get-go. As long as the application is there and you don't have to take that regulatory FDA regulatory burden early upon, you can practice and operate outside the FDA regions, i.e.
And then
in the Asia or in Eastern Europe, and get your product traction and get the efficacy of the product proven, then you plan on the larger expansion.
So as we come to the end of the journey, we started from the ideation all the way. We have gone through like how to be in front of VCs, what skill set you develop, how you develop your team, how you go through the prototype formation, how all of that we have gone. So you have gone through that journey as Anandji suggested. We would love to know your specific example, and we will end there. One or two things that we didn't
There
touch
are there
upon,
are there
maybe.
are questions. I will read those questions after Nitin
Yeah,
finishes.
I get it. So uh, we would like to know that journey from you for a specific product that you have come out with, especially in medical devices. And so few things that we didn't touch upon was sales and marketing. Maybe while you speak about your journey, you may be able to let us know. So we, as a question has come also from audience, and we all want if you can let us know about your product. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that no, my all of my career I get to work on the I call the cardiovascular product, the product those treat either blood vessels or the heart. So my current company, Supera Medical, we are developing a miniaturized catheter-based heart pump. So what happens in those heart attack patient, those patient with cardiac situation, you have a blockage in your coronary artery, and that blockage is getting treated by either balloon angioplasty or stent. You really open the blockage in those patients, and by opening the blockage, you reestablish the blood flow and hopefully address the underlying condition there. But some patients are so critical that they may not even survive the angioplasty or stent procedure, let alone the open bypass procedure. And that's when those patients are not candidate to go through the stenting procedure. Our product that we are currently developing is a miniaturized heart pump. So it really sits inside the ventricle and it pumps the blood from ventricle to the aorta locally there across the aortic valve. And by taking over the ventricular pumping action, heart's pumping action, you allow the physician to conduct angioplasty and stent procedure because the heart was so weak they were not able to do that procedure before. By taking over the pumping action temporarily by this heart pump that we are developing, the physician can complete the angioplasty and stent procedure successfully. And by end of the procedure, once the patient's condition is stable, we take out our heart pump. So it becomes almost a temporary artificial heart in a patient during the procedure of angioplasty and stenting. And we are using the principles of turbo machinery, where it's a small miniaturized turbine that basically spins in the heart.
So how did you start on this idea? Can you give us a little bit of?
Again, this idea again, I was recruited in the earlier stages of this company. Our the founder chairman had this idea and he had early concept, and that time he wanted someone to come in and really take that idea further through development. So one of the things I usually look for is, even though having a formal academic research background and PhD, early upon I decided that instead of coming up completely a brand new idea, I will partner with the scientists and the other engineers who have a lot of ideas, but they don't have whatever reason expertise to take that idea to full initial clinical success and commercialization. So I always train myself to partner with someone with that type of an idea. So you screen the idea and see which idea has the highest potential, and then work on developing the idea. So that's how I get an opportunity to join Supera Medical founder at that time, to take this idea through development to clinical and commercialization. So this product, there is already a commercial product in the market which has some significant limitations. So going back to my earlier screening criteria, this is a fast follower strategy where the product already exists in the market with a significant market share, but a monopoly with some limitation. And so we are addressing the limitation. And in the cardiovascular space, one of the or many of the disease state in minimally invasive surgical therapy, one of the limitation is the product smaller enough to be used safely. And if you can make the idea, come up with an idea that can make the existing product much smaller, that can go through the blood vessel, you have a market opportunity. So our value proposition is very simple. We are developing a pump that can generate higher flow but has much smaller size, and that happened through a technical innovation. And so when I saw the concept, it was very elegant, very basic concept of reducing the size of the pump without compromising the flow. And when I saw that efficacy bench data, I clearly got convinced, and that's how I joined the team. And now we are taking it through development into our first in human trial.
So I will also check the question from somebody and include it in the next one. So when this you had seen the bench data, so we went to Angel or VC. Where did that thing come from?
Yeah, so we at that time.
Question, one question that came along with that from Saurabh Kapure is how to retain management control when the money is coming from the investors.
No, see, that is the balance one has to strike, because that bridge will come when you have to cross that bridge, where you will have you will have to share the company ownership as well as the management control. That's where if you go with the investors who are familiar with that disease space and the therapy space, they can become your advisor and partners. And that way it becomes a collaborative process rather than having a tension between the founder member versus the investor. So if the investor also can contribute towards the building of the company and progression of the company, then it becomes a win-win a situation. Versus if you go with a purely financial investor with no background, then it can become a little bit of a, I will say, a tricky situation. That's one thing. Secondly, of course, there has to be a mutual trust, and the mutual trust comes with your background and the past record. So if you have a track record of getting things done, then hopefully your investors are trusting you and they are giving you the opportunity to make the decisions and make progress, because there will be tough situations along the way. If it is as we say, it's an easy problem to be solved, someone else would have already solved it. So it's a difficult problem you are tackling, right? And so there you need as much support and encouragement from your investment community as well as your board members, for example.
So I think we will open it up for the floor to ask question. There is one question from Shirish Ingavle. Would you please share your thoughts and advice for those who aspire to excel as executive leaders in medical device?
I assume this is pertaining to the career in the larger corporation, right?
Yes, I think that's what it means.
Yeah, that can be a topic by itself, Anita, as you know. But to highlight quickly, one of the areas I highly encourage, as I do mentoring to early talent, is we all have our technical skills, we all have our subject matter expertise. That's what brings you to certain level in your career progression. What really starts making a difference in the later part of your career, that you have to start practicing earlier upon, is all the soft skills. We talk about IQ versus EQ, right? And I'm a big fan of striking the IQ EQ balance. You have your basic IQ, but you have to the soft skill, the emotional quotient that you have to start developing, where you can read the room, you can manage your emotions, you can deliver your difficult message but more respectful manner. All of those IQ related softer skills play a very significant role as you develop your career in the corporate world. That's one thing. Secondly, your stakeholder management in the larger companies. We are part of a department, but you need a support from other departments. So when I was growing through my R&D career, I always kept an eye on my quality functional counterpart, my operational counterpart, my sales, my clinical, my regulatory. Because end of the day, we are here to take the product to commercialization. And if is all other functional areas, they don't consider you as their partner, and they don't believe you as a partner to deliver the result. So that is critical. Working in silos in the corporation is very easily happen, but you have to break those silos and cross the boundaries or cross functional. So to become the executive in the larger corporation, these other functions need to trust you as much as your own function. And so having that cross functional mindset with a soft skill practice along the way, those are the two areas I highly emphasize when I try to mentor the early career talent.
Yeah, I think many technologies work in silo. They are at their own desk and they don't communicate as well as connect. So the connections and understanding the talent around you and actually gathering the talent around you for a long time, that's the key. Anyone has a question, they can raise hand and we can open their microphone and see it. Anandji, you can maybe monitor other people too. Whoever has a question, specific question also, can raise their hand and we will open the mic for them. Nayan Kare, Nayan has opened the hand. So
Hi,
Nayan, you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
hi, Salunke sir. I think really useful information. Your whole journey, inspiring as well. So thank you for that. I am planning to take this step, so it'll be just baby step basically. And I have a specific question. I think you mentioned angel investing in the initial phases. Probably one thing you emphasized a bit along with VC funding. Uh, Specifically, how much time? So I'm at a point where I've sounded the idea with people. Seems the market is there. So how much time should I leave or plan for in terms of investing for angel investing or the first funding, basically, and how to get it right? I think that's a bit of a loaded question, how to get it right, but would be great to know from you. I think any pointers you can give.
Yeah, it's hard to put a time frame for getting that first investment going. So it depends on how well is your network working for you. If not, now that's the first step I will take. Whether through Garje Marathi or other networking forums,
Sure.
look at those individuals who have inclination to do an angel investing. The angel investors are everywhere. Many of them don't even project themselves as angel investors, but they have interest in looking at a new idea and investing in a new idea. Those who have that kind of financial capability. So start looking at that as well as depending on the idea and the disease space. Start networking with those folks who are ahead of you in that sector, and they may give you a pointer, because many of these angel investors, very interestingly, they do a repeat investment in a similar disease space or a product category, because that's
Sure.
their expertise, that's their comfort. Because remember, these angel investors are making a decision. Either they are just purely going with the I call a lottery approach, a luck approach, where they say, I'm going to invest broad enough and something will work out. Or more and more of them invest because they have a background in that area, and they have done either the work in that area, and they know what more can be done in that area. So many of I have a disproportionate angel investors who already are either successful entrepreneurs, or they are executives in this particular medical device space, or they
Right.
have some affiliation in that particular in the industry sector. So that's where most of the angel investors come from, because they don't have either idea time and or
Yeah.
bandwidth available to work on that idea, but they see someone else working that idea that has a potential that they want to support. So start I will say scanning the landscape where there are successful entrepreneurs and or executives in a larger company. And in one other larger I will say pool of angel investors I notice are the physicians or the doctors themselves, because when they see someone working on a product that is making a difference in a disease they are treating, they believe in it. And angel investors, to summarize my answer, they usually have two types of background. One, they have financial background, they have financial strength to
Yeah.
bring money to you. And secondly, they understand that space, so that they believe in your idea. And so usually physician community is another good angel investor community because they understand the disease space and they
Yeah,
have a financial strength.
sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so again, the same thing as I said, Anandji, this is the task on Garze Marathi to, have a set of angel investors in this particular uh, zone or in this particular area of investment. So that is there. Anybody else? Anyone else? So I think how Nitinji has said, I think we can wind up at this point. We are almost at the hour. So thank you so much, Nitinji.
Yes.
It
Can I?
was really a very interesting talk. I
Yeah.
think it was very inspiring. A few
Yeah. Can
things
I?
that
Can I?
yeah, okay.
After you finish. Thanks a lot, Anita. Anita, are you done? I wanted to just say the closing remarks, and I wanted to wish.
I wanted to
Yeah.
summarize a
You-
few things
Yeah.
before we close on this thing.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
what message that we got today was, first of all, have that mindset, start building that mindset from writing a grant to going to a VC or angel investor. So, going from technology to business is a mindset. We have to put efforts to change that and look into more. Number two is definitely connectivity. You need to have your connections and network set up. Carry those, I mean, gather that talent much before you can really think getting onto the entrepreneurial journey. Nitinji has said a great thing that he is looking at some technologies that are already established, and then you are finding a niche into that, so that you can make a mark, you can make a distinguished product that can sell. So look into the exit strategy before what's going to be your thing. So that was a great thing. Medical devices and IT differs. We are into a prototype development, we are into regulatory, so we need those expertise too. It is not just you write a program and you can sell. So those people need to be there. And of course, the message to us is more angel investors as well as other investors on the VC side. We need to have that for all of you to come,
Thank
and
you.
love to see many of these things, especially data collection, happening in India. And also, there was a very good point you made that because of the FDA regulation, going through all that process might be a longer. Having the device released in Eastern Europe or in Asian countries might help you catapult the company towards a certain level where you can take it to the broader audience and introduce in US. I think I covered most
Yeah.
of the point. So it
Thanks.
was very inspiring talk with you. It was great. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'll hand it over to Anandji for the closing remarks.
Thanks a lot, Nitin. Thanks a lot, Dr. Anita. It was an excellent presentation, no doubt about it. Excellent discussion, not a presentation. Nitinji, I would like to share with you, as well as you know that with other members who are present, that Garze Marathi, we at Garze Marathi only, we are starting an angel fund. We will be definitely supporting the startups, and I'm sure persons of with a success like Nitinji will be the part of that angel fund. And with those remarks, I thank everybody who has attended. We have a lot of esteemed members there. Dr. Vijay Talele is there, Gajaran Sabnis is there, and so many others. Kulkarni is there. So all of us together can make it happen. And there is a great scope in medical device. Indian government supports it wholeheartedly. As a matter of fact, there are so many schemes which we are aware of, wherein we can get even the seed capital, the basic fund with the zero money. Also, you can start a startup in a medical device field. With that, thanks a lot. We will be having many more interactions with Nitinji. And I take permission to stop recording as well as to stop the meeting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Nice
Thank you
talking
so
to
much.
all of you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, everybody.